and freak Knuckles, and we're at Pumpkin Hill. You ready?
Everyone who knows anything about 3D Sonic games remembers this level. I don't know if it's the cheesy rap music or the aesthetic of Pumpkin Hill, but the Sonic Adventure games are definitely the most iconic of Sonic's 3D outings. For years, they were hailed as the best 3D Sonic games, and some fans even consider them to be the only good 3D Sonic games. Nowadays, with games like Generations and Colors, most people think differently, and some consider the adventure games to be overrated or just not that good. Nevertheless, I was never a big fan of these games. I liked them when I was younger and thought they were a cool transition for Sonic, but since I only owned the SEGA Genesis and never owned the Dreamcast, I never understood all the huge love for this game. Now I like to be very open-minded of things, and I like to browse the web from time to time to read people's opinions of certain things. And I came across a post that's several years old. It's from a blogger, and he wrote a blog on why he thinks Sonic Adventure 2 has the best story in gaming, period. Of course, this sounded laughable at first. The Sonic Adventure series is remembered for its ridiculous music, voice acting, and tacked-on story. But few people, however, know that some of that music, namely the themes accompanying the Knuckles levels, were written by longtime SEGA audio producer Tomoya Otani in association with rapper Hunted P. Hidden within each of these seemingly incomprehensible songs is the tale of a very confused soul, lost in the reality of its own design, that is struggling to come to terms with the profound realization of its utter powerlessness in the world. Sounds crazy, right? Well, it's time to have your mind blown. First off, you have to realize that this is not completely Otani's original vision, because he had to make his true intentions as unnoticeable as possible in order to get his songs approved. And since SEGA ultimately had the final word on everything, his work has been obscured to some degree. Everything had to be contextual to the levels in the game, which had already been finalized before Otani was brought in. But thankfully, Otani left behind song titles to serve as additional clues to the original meaning of each piece. Now, some of you are wondering why you haven't heard of this before. Good question. It was in 2007 that the blogger first stumbled upon a MySpace post by Otani linked to him through an IRC chat room, nearly 6 years after the game's original Dreamcast release. SEGA must have ordered the post taken down before it caught mainstream attention. Perhaps it was simply out of a fear that they would appear more ignorant to their customers, but I can think of no other reason as to why this sudden information would suddenly disappear from the net without a trace. It's quite shocking that there is virtually no information on this. Otani's story was basically that of a man torn to pieces by the realization that his entire life is a self-fabricated monstrosity. Basically, Otani is implying through his lyrics that the world of Sonic the Hedgehog is actually an illusion, formed under the aid of hallucinogens that Knuckles has created to shelter himself from the harsh realities of the real world. It's basically a story of utter defeat by one's own self and a glorious revelation and rebirth. The classic tale of a man becoming more than himself only when he is at his lowest. It's quite a remarkable story, and one made all the more so by the medium through which it is told. There are a few things essential to understanding the story to the fullest. Number 1, this is a monologue. Every song is quick to remind us that this is an account of Knuckles' thoughts in the first person in the beginning of every song. This is a tale told by its narrator, and as such there are things to consider. Is Knuckles being completely truthful to the audience? Is he even being completely truthful to himself? Number 2, Otani never had the final say on the music for each song. Although he did have a general idea of what the music would be like for each track before he composed the lyrics, he never actually had an influence on the final pieces of music his words were performed over. He would often be forced by SEGA to completely redo a song, giving him very little time to fix the lyrics for each new master. As such, the meaning of the lyrics and the context the music places into them may seem to clash at times, but keep in mind that in most cases these are two separate bodies of work. Number 3. The final level in which all the characters team up is not canon to Otani's story. He had no creative control over the music in this part, and thus it should not be considered part of his work. Number 4. There was a song cut from the game. Early in development, there was going to be one more Knuckles level in the game, a snow level. This was actually the last Knuckles only section, and thus it was originally the final act of Otani's epic. I do not, as previously stated, have a copy of the original blog post in which Otani revealed the true meaning behind his lyrics. However, I will attempt to recount the final chapter's general overview as best as I can. With that out of the way, let's get on to the part you've all been waiting for.
This is Knuckles, and I'm back. I've been away for a while.
Kick the Rock is the first and most unassuming of the Otani tracks. It's a very lighthearted, very fun song. It is meant as a reintroduction to the world of Sonic the Hedgehog and what it's all about. Basically, it's a setup for things to come. However, don't be fooled by the upbeat rhythm. There is darker subtext work here. The first thing we notice is the use of the word Echidona in the line 1 of the second stanza. Not only is Knuckles not an Echidona, but Echidona is not actually a word. Knuckles is an echidna, and for SEGA to have made such a slip up with their own character would normally be inexcusable. However, this was no slip up, this was intentional. Here we see Otani begin to play with the idea that Knuckles is beginning to realize that he isn't sure who he is anymore. This is further implied by the line, "Never seen a mic hog spit like a menace," as Knuckles is also not a hedgehog. This line specifically may be one of the early warning signs that Sonic and the rest of the cast are all actually Knuckles himself, drug-fueled personas created by a desperate imagination trying to hang on to the illusion. There are also some other mature themes briefly glanced over in this song, like sex, Knuckles' often rash and violent nature, and of course drug references. Although Otani never specified what Knuckles would have been consuming, it's possible he was consuming crack cocaine. This is implied by the title Kick the Rock, as well as Knuckles' constant paranoia regarding the safety of his Master Emerald. Although this would not explain the extreme level of hallucination he is experiencing throughout the story, it is never implied that Knuckles is only taking one type of drug, so he could in fact be partaking multiple substances.
Echidona, that's what I'm representing. Never seen a mic hog spit like a menace. You know me.
Here we begin to see Knuckles slowly begin to succumb to his paranoia as the once wistful valleys of the Wild Canyon are twisted and contorted into the nightmare realm now known only as Pumpkin Hill. The important things to recognize are the metaphors Otani is using with the ghosts and pumpkins. Basically, the ghosts represent the few remaining scraps of Knuckles' conscious, waking mind that realize the truth of his situation, whereas the pumpkins are the hallucinations created by his subconscious in self-defense against recognizing reality. As Knuckles comes closer to the truth of his dream world's fabrication, they begin to transform into horrifying abominations in an attempt to ward him away back into their comforting embrace. This is further expounded upon in the title, A Ghost Pumpkin Soup, that denotes the fact that this wretched dreamscape in which Knuckles now resides was, originally, a creation of his waking mind attempting to escape its frustrations with the world. This is also the first song in which the true nature of the Master Emerald is revealed. The Master Emerald is, in actuality, Knuckles' mind. Every time it comes close to completion, it is broken apart as he suffers yet another mental breakdown, further isolating him from the reality which he so feverishly denies. The two most interesting lines here are those of 8 and 9 in the second stanza. Knuckles explains that his graveyard theory is that a ghost tried to approach him but got leery. Let's look at it from the perspective of the ghost as a metaphor for Knuckles' waking mind. Knuckles' conscious mind, the one that is aware of the falsity of the illusion, approaches him attempting to bring him back into reality. However, it gets leery before it is able to do so. Now, what does leery mean? Well, the traditional definition is a caution brought about by completely rational fears, realistic fears. Think about that, realistic fears. This is just another example of the masterful wordplay at work here. The ghost is not afraid of being harmed by the corporeal Knuckles. It is afraid that he is not capable of handling reality without doing irreversible harm to himself. Knuckles then begins frantically climbing, the menacing anecdotes issuing forth from the pumpkins, corrupting his every thought, trying to find any semblance of rationale behind the events that are beginning to tear his world apart. He then jumps off and begins flying deeper. Deeper, not into darkness, but into his own consciousness, desperately searching for answers. This is the first track whose music really detracts from Otani's lyrics, although that may not initially seem to be the case. The problem with this song, and really even the title Dive Into the Mellow, is that it implies that Knuckles has lapsed back into hallucination and is farther from the truth than ever. In actuality, that is not the case, at least not yet. The use of mellow in the title is meant to invoke a feeling of almost reaching that point of clarity. Basically, this is the point in the story where Knuckles reaches out towards reality, almost manages to finally, after so long, touch it, but inevitably falling back into darkness, as is evident by the next song, Deeper. The music here is meant to be a bit more erratic, to convey the idea that Knuckles is frantically searching but also very much confused with the concept of who he actually is and why the world around him is shifting into a dark, antagonistic nightmare realm. This is when we begin to see Knuckles questioning the world around him. He begins to question why things are the way they are, even somewhat resenting it, as is evident in the lines.
Makes you wanna sit back, enjoy the life, and do things you like doing, get to shine. It's your beast fighting with the foes all the time, but I gotta do it, they always stay out of line.
But there is also profound confusion ailing Knuckles. He feels lost in his own home, in his own mind, and he is still plagued by demonic visions, his subconscious still mangling itself into an ever darker form. He feels trapped, like he is drowning in it all with no hope left of finding a way out, but there is still one light left, minuscule though it may be. He remains determined. He has no goal, or even any way of knowing exactly what it is that he is searching, but he refuses to back down. It is that trait that defines Knuckles, but also leads him to his eventual downfall. And here is where we finally arrive, the breaking point. This is the climax of the story and where everything starts to fall apart for Knuckles. This is where Knuckles' darkest fears finally take over and drop him into a terrifying realm known as Death Chamber. He breaks almost instantly. The visions he is confronted with prove too much for him to handle, and his mind finally snaps. It is in this piece that the construction of the Sonic universe as a lucid hallucination is brought to bear, and the truth of Knuckles' situation is exposed in full force. The lyrical aspect of the song is actually incredibly minimal, and as such, almost every single line is packed with meaning. This is the beginning of the song when Knuckles starts to panic. He knows that what he is seeing isn't right, but he is still apprehensive. He is actually starting to realize what has been going on, but he doesn't want to accept it. We can see this apprehension specifically in I Don't Call This Home. This statement wasn't prompted. In fact, he had no reason to say it at all, except it is his home. It is his mind, but he wants to believe above all hope that this is just another horrible hole in the earth that his emerald somehow fell into. Now this is very interesting and really brings to bear the crux of the story. Eggman wants to steal our soul? I'm pretty sure that has never been Eggman's motive, and notice the wording. He wants to steal our soul, not our souls or my soul, our soul. This is further confirmed by the re-emergence of the idea of the Master Emerald. Once again, the idea of the emerald as the pieces of Knuckles' mind is brought up again. With Eggman, who we can only assume at this point is the ultimate manifestation of Knuckles' damaged psyche, wants to build a throne out of the emerald so that he can gain control of the Echidna and keep him safe from reality once and for all. Need I say more? And it is then that we come to what may be one of the most simultaneously beautiful and terrifying pieces of music ever created? The argument.
Sonic, what are you doing here? I heard you on a quest for the Master Emerald. You know me and you don't get along. I don't think that's the point right now, Knuckles. I know how much the Emerald means to you, and I want to help get it back. Stop being stubborn and think. Well, I guess you're right. You're damn right, Knuckles. I know Eggman's secret station's here somewhere. All we have to do is find it. I know we'll need a key to get inside. That's our only way to find it, so let's go.
It is here that Otani really shines as both a lyricist and a storyteller. So much struggle, so much anguish, and then that release. This part can be a little difficult to follow, so allow me to break it down. Just as Knuckles is about to give in, perhaps even opting to commit suicide, Sonic appears out of nowhere and urges him to go on, to not give up and keep charging ahead. Obviously, if there was any doubt, this pretty much steals the fact that Sonic is just another personality created by Knuckles. Sonic isn't real, but there is more to it than that. It was generally a consensus at the time that, much like Eggman, Sonic is the avatar of the remaining pieces of Knuckles' waking mind and most likely always has been. It is in this time of need that Knuckles' conscious mind finally refuses to obey the rules of this warped reality and sends a messenger in the guise of one of Knuckles' own creations to guide him to the truth, to guide him to the key to escape his self-created prison. And it is with this that the final battle commences. There is surprisingly very little to this track in terms of narrative. There is certainly a little development here, but the main focus was to be on the music, carrying the flow of the battle with Eggman. Sadly, both the story and music of this level were changed rather late in the development of Sonic Adventure 2, when it was decided that the final section of the game would feature all the characters rather than just Sonic and Shadow. This was a major blow to Otani's work, but it was so late in the game's life that he could neither alter or abandon his magnum opus even if he wanted to. While the original brilliance of this track may be lost to the ages, we can still at least garner some info of the final confrontation between Knuckles and Eggman from the song's lyrics. Obviously, the first thing most listeners will notice that Knuckles and Sonic are now in space and, as Knuckles puts it, they left from our home. This is not to imply that they have physically left home, as I'm sure you are already aware, but they have left the realm of Knuckles' subconscious completely. They have ascended to a new plane, perhaps even some kind of spirit dimension, to finally confront and kill Eggman. As they dodged meteors to reach Eggman, it was speculated that the meteors were probably the subconscious finally resorting to physical violence against Knuckles, perhaps even causing him to harm himself in real life. Knuckles notes that he has a crazy look in his face. This is not actually because Eggman looks weird, but because he is no longer Eggman at all. He has adopted a new nightmarish form that is the true avatar of Knuckles' delusional state, but Knuckles himself fails to notice he has become overwhelmed completely with determination. The rest of the song consists of a repeated chorus that was most likely added after the fact to fill up space as the original track was, as previously mentioned, supposed to be almost entirely instrumental. In the original version of Sonic Adventure 2, Knuckles would defeat Eggman only to fall to Earth, landing atop a gigantic snow-covered mountain, which he would then snowboard down, much akin to the first Sonic level of the game. This was intended to be a reward for the player and a break from the normal gameplay of the Knuckles levels. It is assumed there were to be more than 6 levels in early development. Further into development, it was going to serve as an interactive overlay for the credits. This was when Otani got a hold of it. Snowbake Mountain was cut relatively early, so while Otani never was able to complete a finished lyric sheet for this section of the game, he did in fact have a finale written out. Otani did give some idea of what he had intended to do with the ending in his MySpace post, but he was never explicitly clear about some major details, hoping that each individual could draw their own conclusions to the story that would satisfy them. The two most popular theories at the time were as follows. A majority of people believe that Snowbank Mountain was in fact the mountain of drugs, and that having been exhausted in the final battle with Eggman, that his subconscious took the opportunity to take back control of Knuckles and send him, quite literally, spiraling down into oblivion. It is assumed that the ride down the mountain is paranoid Knuckles, who has lost all control on a deranged drug spree, and that the final blackout to credit is, in actuality, meant to represent his death. In this version of the ending, the title could be considered black humor or even ironic, as Knuckles' true self turns out to be the animalistic, impulsive-driven drug fiend he had been all along, and there never was truly any hope for release for him other than death. Many were unsatisfied with such an obvious and quite frankly disappointing twist to what had otherwise been a masterful crafted tale. Many believe that Otani was far better than this and set out to dig deeper into the previous entries to derive the true meaning of Find Myself. The biggest clue was when Otani mentioned that he had made a major revision to Find Myself upon learning that it would become a credit stage. Now, why would that be? Well, the credits themselves would be the multiple personalities of Knuckles, the friends he had come to love and cherish over the years he spent with them, slowly disappearing from him as he slipped more and more back into reality as he cruised down the mountain. Knuckles would never face the camera, he would never look back until the game was over. There wouldn't even be any lyrics this time, just an eerie silence. The game would end with a cut to black and complete silence as the Sonic Team logo came up for one last time and simply hung there, waiting for the player to provide input for the game to continue. The player themselves would have to cast away Sonic, not only a character that gamers around the world have known and loved for decades, but also the last and only true friend Knuckles ever had, even if he was imaginary. The player themselves would have to pull the final plug on Knuckles' warped reality and finally set him free. Hey everyone, thanks for watching my Sonic theory. Please smash that like button if you enjoyed the video, as I put a lot of effort in this. And if you're new, be sure to subscribe to my channel too. I apologize for taking so long to post another one. I just wanted my second theory to be even better than before. The last one I did on Amy Rose was 6 months ago, so if you haven't checked that out yet, what are you waiting for? Also, I promise there will be much more Sonic theories to come in the next month. Husky Z and I have a lot of great ideas. And if you like more Sonic, go and click on my top 5 Dimp Sonic games video where I list my favorite Sonic games on the handheld. And last but not least, I've been working on a Super Smash Bros. Animation, which will be coming out soon. So go and check out the trailer I posted earlier this month. Anyway, I never know how to end these kinds of videos, so I'm sorry if I ruined any of your childhoods with this video, but hey, it's just a theory, a Sonic theory. Okay, I should never say that again. Alright everyone, swag out.